The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. To all of the sisters here today, inshallah, we are waiting just another minute or so, and then we will begin our program, inshallah. Open secret to a healthy marriage. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This program today, this session, this workshop has been the planning has been such a critical program in these critical times that you and I are facing. This program couldn't come at a better time. This program came at a time when our young people are struggling to find that spouse and to figure out who they should marry. This program has come at a time when marriages are crumbling even before the first year anniversary of that marriage. This program has come at a time when couples have been intertwined in their marriages for decades. But after 30, 40, 50 years of marriage to that same person, their marriages are crumbling. This program couldn't have come at a better time when those of us who think that our marriages are perfect and nothing could ever go wrong, this is a wake-up call for all of us. No matter what situation or position you feel you are in your marriages, this couldn't come at a better time, this program. And for those of us who are out of the marriage period of our lives, this program couldn't come at a better time to hone in on the messages that we will receive today and to share that with someone who really needs it. When the national divorce rate in this country is holding steady at 50%, at some point, some places say that even that divorce rate is declining in this country. And while it's on a slow decline, the Muslim American divorce rate is steadily rising. From 35%, some say, even higher, and going up and up. So with that in mind, with that picture in front of us, it has become increasingly important for families, for you and I, for our families, for our coworkers, for our children, for our grandchildren, for our neighbors. It has become increasingly important for all of these people to understand how to minimize the risks and the pressures that are felt in a marriage, and how to build on healthy marriages, how to build a healthy marriage, how to lay the foundation. Is a marriage perfect? Is a union always perfect? No. When this is the purpose of this dunya is to strive for perfection. So before I ask for our first speaker for the hour to come to the mic, I invite you all on behalf of the matrimonial department to not sit back and relax. This is not the time to just listen to what these speakers have to say to you. We don't want you to take it easy in this program. We want you to sit upright. We want you to be vigilant. We want you to pay heed. We want you to take notice. We want you to make notes so that not only can you better yourself as the spouse, but so that you can share this information and share this knowledge and help others who may be desperately needing it. Also, towards the end of this program today, Please stick around all the way toward the end because there will be time for questions to be answered by either of our panelists, inshallah. Our first speaker is Sister Farhana Matin. She currently lives in New Jersey and is a mother of 2. And she presently holds the title of Director of Operations for the ICNA Relief Chapter in New Jersey. She has a bachelor's in home economics. She has a master's in sociology. She is a graduate student of the Intensive Fahm al-Quran course offered by ICNA Sisters in 2004. She taught the course herself from ICNA Sisters from 2005 to 2017. She is currently also a spiritual counselor for the Islamic Circle of North America in New Jersey and for the ICNA Relief Chapter there as well. And she offers personality and family development workshops on a variety of topics. I would like you all to please welcome Sister Farhana Matin as she begins her talk on Before You Tie the Knot. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi. A'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما صدق الله العظيم. I just recited 3 verses from Quran, and these 3 verses are also the verses which we must all have heard so many times at the khutbah of nikah. The first verse is from Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 102, and the translation is, O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah as his due, and die not except as true Muslims. Then Surah Nisa, ayah number 1, O mankind, have taqwa of your Lord, who created you from a single person, and from him he created his mate, and from them both he created many men and women. And have taqwa of Allah through whom you demand your mutual rights. And revere the wombs. Surely Allah is always watching over you. Surah Ahzab, ayah 71. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah and speak always the truth. He will direct you to do righteous good deeds and will forgive you your sins. And whosoever obeys Allah and his messenger, he has indeed achieved a great victory. Just like Hina said, the title of the program is Before You Tie the Knot. That means I will be talking about so many things that should be kept in consideration. People should think about them before the whole, not only the ceremony, the wedding ceremony, but in fact the whole thinking process. If somebody wants to get married, if the parents want that their kids should get married, or if an individual thinks that he or she should get married, what are the things that should be kept in mind? This is what my topic is. So I begin with this word marriage. There are so many names that we use for this word in our local languages, regional languages, mother tongue, but even in English, these words, marriage, matrimony, wedlock, wedding, they are used to talk about basically marriage. Now, what is marriage? It is something that people do religiously and culturally, and a very common understanding as to what marriage is. It's basically a union between people, a man and a woman. They are called spouses. They enter into this relationship with their free and full consent. And this is what Islam also says, that the consent of the individual is very important. And this relationship is physical relationship between the husband and wife. And that establishes rights and obligations between them, husband and wife, and also between the children and between the in-laws. In any culture, whether it's Muslim, whether it's American, Western, any religious culture, any or any other culture on the basis of any language or any country or any part of the world, any region, when you talk about marriage, these couple of things, everybody agrees that this is what marriage is. But something that needs to be kept in mind from the very beginning when we are raising our kids, because every mother, every father, whether they say it or not, or every young adult, whether they talk about it or not, they do know that they have to get married one day. But most of the time, the reason why marriages fall apart or do not work the way we want them to work is because people start thinking that this is my life. But it is said that marriage is a story in which you are not the author. It's not your life story. You are the co-writer. You are writing this story with someone else. And whatever your story is, it begins, it develops and grows and ends with your partner. Anything that is happening in your life, whether you are going up and high, or there are some lows also that come in the lifetime. Some climax happens, plot twists, drama, accidents, whatever. And then the happy ending. The both spouses, the husband and wife, are in this together. Islam puts very emphasis on this relationship. In Quran, there are several verses that talk about this relationship. One of which is the first verse of Surah Nisa that I just recited in front of you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to ensure that human species continues. And for this reason, this relationship is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for this relation to last long, love and mercy between husband and wife is also one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah has put that mercy and love in the hearts of husband and wife so that they accommodate each other and they live with each other. Because marriage is not only about two people living together and creating children. Marriage is an institution, family institution, the first institution in the world that was built by Allah, started by Allah. The first human beings, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam, they were husband and wives. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it to be like that. So this is the first institution. But before we move into what is marriage or what is family, let's just talk about what is an institution. Institution is some type of organization which actually promotes a particular cause or program. If there is no cause, if there is no agenda, then institutions are not established, because institutions work towards a goal. So when we talk about marriage or family, we must use the word that this is an institution. And specifically in today's world, weddings are more important, but marriages are not. Whether we talk about the Western culture or we talk about all the other cultures which are not Western, because most of the people, and I believe people who are in this room right now also, some of us do not belong to this culture when we were young. Like we were not born and raised in this culture. But back home, from whichever country we are, a lot of emphasis is on the wedding day, the celebrations and the colors and the clothing and everything, which is all fine and good. But the institution part of the whole understanding of what marriage is missing across the board. Like the whole continent world, the whole world is missing out on this. So we need to talk about this, because the problem starts when you actually don't know where you are and what you are doing. So whenever we talk about weddings and marriages and family and all of these things, we are basically talking about institution, and the purpose of this institution is procreation. One simple word. The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted people to get married, so that they can produce children. Okay, fine, children, but children can be produced without marriages also, which is a very common thing in the non-Muslim culture. But Islam does not only talk about, okay, somebody should get married and then they should have children. When Islam talks about marriage or family institution, Islam teaches us how to choose a partner. And there are steps toward this. What are the standards on which you like or dislike somebody, reject or accept somebody, how to send proposal, then everything, step by step. And then this contract, when it is signed, it brings or gives responsibilities to the both parties. And the idea is to safeguard the family. It is not only procreation, but also to take care of those kids, those people who are born as a result of this relationship. And then if there is any discord, any conflict, any dissension between the couples, how this problem is going to be solved. This marriage institution or family institution talks about all of these things. And that is why if you look at the words, like even just simple words, in Arabic language specifically, because Arabic is the language of Quran, and we the Muslims, we derive our source from Quran. So it's very important that we understand the language, what is the meaning of this word. So in English language, we say family, and in all the other languages, we have special words for whatever the family is. But Arabic language uses a couple of words to describe what a family is. One is usra, the other is aila, another one is al, and then ahl. These are all the words. But if you can see, they have slight difference in their meanings. One could mean immediate family, then some could get close family, then someone is like relations or relatives or something. But the word extended family, the extended word, is found in all of the meanings. Usra means a group of people connected through certain relationships. Aila means family and extended family. Al means extended family and then relations. And Ahl also means the people who are relatives. So it gives us an understanding that in Islam, when you start a family, although it is a relationship between two people, but a group of people from this side and a group of people from that side, somehow they also come closer. I'm not going into the details of how close they should come and how should they live. They should be living in one house or separate homes. This is not the topic. But just to understand that the big difference between the Western understanding of marriage or married life per se and Islamic understanding of marriage, The, the slight difference, or you can also say the major difference, is that although relationship between husband and wife, children are being born through this, is same. But then the sense of responsibility towards both families, the family of the bride and the family of the groom, is also something that Islam takes into consideration. And if individuals or families who are coming together as a result of this relationship, if they understand the whole idea, it's easy for them to grow together. Because marriage is not only about people are just getting together to go together somewhere, going on honeymoon, going on parties, living, making houses, buying cars, working, paying bills. No, you have to grow together. Not only individuals, but the whole community develops as a result of marriage, because it's always about families, and families are the units that actually build the whole communities. And the family, the status of family is so important in Islam that I just am giving an example of Surah Mujadila. The first verse of Surah Mujadila is about a woman. She came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam concerning her husband. She is complaining about her husband. And I'm not going into the detail of all of this. I believe so many of you already know. But if you don't, this is not the time to discuss the tafsir of the whole surah. But in very simple words, there was some thing going on between the husband and the wife is complaining to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I am concerned that my husband is going to leave me, and how would I live, and all of those things. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being the prophet, was not authorized to give any ruling until and unless he was directed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at that point, he did not have any answer for this woman. So he kept quiet, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse that Allah hears the argument between you both. Allah has heard what this woman is saying, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervened into this woman's situation and helped her out. This is the status of family in Islam, that when women are suffering in pre-Islamic world, specifically in the Arab, but then throughout the world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed verses and chapters full of solution for the problems of women, because not only as an individual women were suffering, but the suffering of a woman is directly affecting the family institution, which is affecting the community, which is affecting the world. So although we are talking about one person or two people, but basically we are talking about a global crisis. So this is the status of family in Islam. Now, responsibility of a family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given so much responsibility to human beings that not only making homes and creating children and, you know, all of these things, which is basically what we see the families are doing, but the reason why Islam stresses so much on how to raise good families is because at the end of the day, the main purpose of the creation of human beings is that they have to fulfill a responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to human beings. And marriages are all about creating and making those people who can come forth when they are young adults and take over the responsibility, take over that mission in life. So families are a platform where all of this happens. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this responsibility to human beings, that they have to make sure that the next generation, when it's coming, it is ready to take on to those responsibilities for which initially Allah has created these human beings, all of us. So not only that we are to make sure that we as an individual and the next generation is fulfilling the responsibility, which is the main purpose of our creation, but also the action item, if you may, that the longer and the bigger goal is to make sure that the society runs smoothly, but how is what we do within this marriage institution is to raise those people who are good for themselves and others. This is the main and very important point, that if we do not raise kids who are good for themselves and others, then this responsibility of making sure that the world moves in the right direction is not possible. And this training takes a long and hard period of constantly reminding kids what to do, what not to do, how to do and how not to do, and all of this parenting thing that we do. It is not only to make them people or kids who can clean their room and can get A's in their classes and get a better job at the end of the day, so that they become good husbands and wives, and that they can become good parents, so that whatever human beings, especially as Muslims, what we are supposed to be doing in this world, they should continue when we are no longer in the world. Our children, who are the parents and the spouses, can fulfill the responsibility. And this preparation for not only taking care of yourself, but also for others is very difficult. And this is something very crucial that most of the people are missing out in this world. I'm going to talk about this world, like literally this world where we are living right now, in a little bit. But this is actually the reason where the problem begins as to why people are not getting married, why marriages are falling apart, and all of these things. It's because it's very difficult to train somebody, to educate somebody into taking care of yourself and taking care of others. Looks very easy, sounds very easy, but it's not that easy. Now coming to the main topic is marriage. So now this is a very famous hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when someone whose religion and character you are pleased with proposes to someone under the care of you, to one of you, then marry to him. If you do not do so, then there will be turmoil in the land and abounding discord, that is fasad. Now this hadith uses this word here, you can see on your screen, deen. When someone whose deen and character you are pleased with. Now here the translation in English is religion, which is a correct translation. The word religion, deen, is translated as religion also. But my whole topic today is basically this understanding of deen. Now very simple meaning of deen is the way of life. Way of life is deen. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when somebody's way of life is fine and okay, then don't wait. Marry your child or your daughter or your son to that person whose way of life is good. Now what is this way of life? So this is the main topic which I am going to elaborate a little more. That now we have to raise those children whose deen is good. How to raise those children into becoming that person, a good spouse and a good parent whose deen is good. We all live in a bubble. We admit it or we don't. We like it or we don't. But we do live in bubble, and this bubble is the bubble of our environment. And we do reflect what surrounds us. The way we behave, not only our languages and our accents, but our likes and dislikes, our body languages, the way we choose something, the reasons we choose certain things and we don't, or reject certain things, it all is because there is a bubble around us. There is a boundary around us. We are confined in that. We call ourselves free thinkers. We say that we have independent minds, but no, we do conform to some boundaries, and we are closed in those boundaries. And specifically, Muslims who are living in the Western societies, we have sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 boats in which we are at, we are present at the same time. One identity is Islamic, the other is our culture, and then the other is the country in which we are living or the community in which we are living, and then our financial and our friend circle and our job and our education and so on and so forth. There are layers upon layers upon layers. Who am I? This definition is not that easy that I can just give you my name and then everything is fine. There's so much more to that. So when we talk about the definition of marriage, or what marriage does, or what happens after marriage from Islamic perspective, these are the words in Arabic. Quran says relationship of marriage is mithaqan ghaliza. It's a very hard bound contract. Then the word muhsinat, a fortress which preserves and protects. Litaskunu ilayha, gives sukoon and peace. Mawadda wa rahma, love and mercy. Libas, protection, covering, adornment. All of these words are used to describe this relationship. But when we look at the cultural understanding of what a wedding is, and I'm not using the word marriage, I'm using the word wedding is basically a tradition. When we talk about weddings, a certain type of color, a certain type of flower, the certain types of jewelry, and the certain types of songs or food items, like what are you going to serve to the dinner, at dinner, and all of these things. Then love and romance between husband and wife. Where are they going to travel after the wedding? But again, protection. It is a legal contract. Money is definitely related. What is the guy's salary? What is their finances going to be? Whatever. And then independence. When people get married, after that they are independent to decide what they have to do, and they are not bound to follow the rules of their parents. This is just a very cultural definition or understanding of these are the things that people talk about wedding or marriage. That's what they think about. But now when we talk about marriage in a much detail, and I'm now going to talk about things from the sociology point of view. My field of interest, if you say, or my field of education, I did my master's in sociology and anthropology and community change and community development. So I look at things from that perspective. So what you can see on your screen right now is a contrast between what Muslims think of marriages in a Muslim society and what is a Western society's understanding of marriage. There are some similarities and some differences. Now, why am I talking about this? Going back to remind you that we are talking about religion, we are talking about deen. The hadith that if you like the deen of somebody, if you like the lifestyle of somebody, then do not wait. But when we talk about lifestyle, just like I said, we live in our own bubbles. We live in our own little circle. Now for us, most of us who are parents, and if you are not born and raised in this country, in this culture of United States of America or the Western society, then your bubble is very different from your child's bubble because your children are born and raised in this society where definitions are very different. So one similarity between a Muslim's understanding of marriage and Western marriage is both of them agree that this is a legal and binding document. When a husband and wife are married, they are legally married, and then they have to pay their taxes together and whatever. But in Muslim society, there are some differences also. Again, another similarity is that it requires consent. Same way in Western country also. Without consent, there is no marriage. But when the actual ceremony is happening, in Muslim communities, it is signed and agreed upon and witnessed by guardians and elders of the spouses. But in Western marriage, it is just signed and agreed upon. It's not necessary that the whole clan and the whole family and the father and this and that needs to be present. It's just a contract between two people and that's it. In Muslim community, it's a civil contract between two people with the backing of two families. But in Western, there's no defined framework. It doesn't have to involve the whole family from this side and that side. In Muslim communities, it is a constitution to start a home. It's basically rules and regulations that you are now starting a family. Why? Because going back to the Surah Ahzab, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you to give you a responsibility which mountains and all the other creation of Allah has refused to take. And you as human beings had taken up that responsibility. So now you have to go and fulfill that. So there is a guideline that is given to you. But in Western communities, there's no constitution. There's no basic reason why you're getting married, except that you love each other or you want to start a family. That's it. You are not responsible for the betterment of the community and all any of such things. No. In Muslim community, the relationship between husband and wife is a lifelong relationship. Not only in this life, but the next life also. In the Western marriages, is just as long as we are getting along. If we are not getting along, we can always separate because there is no taboos attached. In Muslim communities, when the trouble happens, the solution comes from culture, traditions, law, religion, and all of these things. In Western marriages, if there is a problem, either people decide among themselves or the judge may decide, they go to court, and then they get whatever they want to decide what is going to happen. Muslim society, couples are expected to follow the traditions of the family, but in Western, everybody is free to decide whatever do they want. Again, just a reminder, when we talk about this part of the screen, Muslim society is thinking of marriage as this, which most of the parents whose kids are now at the age of getting married or, young adults, they somehow, not all of them, but mostly the parents think in this way, but the kids, they think of a wedding and any relationship in this way. And this is the problem that actually happens. But why is this happening? I'm going to go into a little more detail about why is this so? Why do Muslims think in a different way and Western people think in a different way? Because of the way the value orientation system is. What are the things that Muslims value and what are the things that a Western society values? In a Muslim society is a collectivistic society. Collective, the meaning, everything is together. As opposed to Western society, which again is the society in which we are raising our kids. They are individualistic. So again, if you can see the similarities and differences, mostly differences here now. Major concern is group or community. In our Muslim society and most Eastern culture, which they are derived from the religious teachings, major concern is group and community. Daughter-in-laws are supposed to sometimes serve the mother-in-laws and father-in-laws and the extended in-laws family. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm just saying the level of expectation is that the whole group and the whole community is to be taken into consideration as opposed to individual societies. Individual is only important and primary concern is myself or my immediate family. Other than that, no need to get involved into too many people. Muslim society, which is collectivistic society, space and privacy are less important. But then here you see space and privacy is very, very important. It's my life. I don't like it. Don't interfere in my business. All of these things. Sometimes kids say that. Business is relative and collaborative. Business is competitive. Essential ingredient is sacrifice. Ingredient of sacrifice is basically missing. Group is expected to look after individual in exchange for loyalty. Everybody has to be loyal to that family. People are considered good if they are strong, if they are independent. Muslim societies privileges family and community so much so that children are likely to take care of elderly parent if they fall ill and will change their own plans in the event of a family emergency. Western society privileges individuals over family and community. Now these are the facts. And if you discuss these facts from the sociological or from the anthropology point of view, these are not good or bad. Nobody is saying that Muslims are good and Western or individualistic societies are bad. These are the facts of life, that some people are like this and some people are like that. Now what actually is happening is that these two different people, this group is living with this group. This group is raising this group. This group is either marrying this group or this group is the parent or the mother-in-laws and father-in-laws of the kids who are this group. And this is becoming the reason that sometimes we actually ourselves don't know that our kids are completely different from who we are from the very beginning. But when they get married and when conflicts arise, then either we blame the community that the American system of life is so bad that kids are thinking like that, or sometimes people just outright go and blame the spouse. Your husband is making you do this, or your wife is doing this, and blah, blah, blah. But if you go into a little more detail, that Muslim societies are very homogeneous population. We basically live with the same people all our lives. But in Western country, kids are raised in a very diverse situation. People see so many different. When we were growing up, the only people we could see were the people who live wear the same type of clothes, eat the same types of food, talk in the same language. Here, our kids can hang out with people from Spain or Italy or any part of the world. So their understanding is very different. So the way they talk about things, the way they understand things is very different. And one more important thing is the power distance culture. The Muslim or / Desi culture, we conform to hierarchy. Everybody has a place, and that's it. And our system is like that, as opposed to the Western society. The power is distributed among everybody. The way kids talk, or we call them talking back, the kids talk back to us, is basically not talking back. But because they do not believe in this hierarchy that, okay, father said this, now you're not going to talk or say anything against. This culture teaches them that you can express yourself. Relationship between bosses and subordinates is of interdependence. I work for you, you work for me. We both are together in this. Now, this is the reason I am discussing all of these things with you. And then another is high context communication style. And this is basically the crux of the matter. Especially this part, if you see, look at number 4. Information given is implicit in high context communication style, which means the Muslim cultures, most Muslim countries, and you can see the name of the countries here, the Afghans, the Africans, the Arab, the Chinese, the Pakistani, the Persian, and especially even in United States of America, the Northeast America is different, but the South American, southern states of America are the high context communication where people are given directions in implicit way. And I can give you an example. I have a little bush of mint in my backyard. One day I was cooking something and I asked my son to give me some mint. He was like, what do you mean by some? And I said, just a handful. He said, what do you mean by handful? I said, a couple of leaves of mint I just need. He literally gave me 3 leaves of mint. Why? Because I was implying that I needed a little bit of mint. As opposed to he is trained by his teachers or the community that you have to be very explicit. If you want 5 mint leaves, give me 5. So I learned after that, when I'm cooking, I always tell him, give me 17 pieces of leaves of mint, and he gives me 17 leaves of mint. This is a low context communication system. The reason I discussed all of these things with you is because this is the reason why divorce rate is increasing, and this is the reason why we are not finding the right, quote unquote, right spouse, because the parents who want their kids to get married belong to this culture. If you can see on your screen on your left side, this is the way we behave. And if you look at the right side of your screen, when you like something, you say this: high five, fist bumps, peace. We think, they say it. If I don't like anything, my father does, or somebody elder in my family, I cannot say anything. They can actually say it. So these things, again, this picture, if you can see, tells us the difference of what is actually happening. I got this picture from this website. I have cited this is the website where I got this. This is the Western society. This is the Eastern society. They change a lot. We don't. They are very straightforward. We are this. Individual is very big, not very big. On the dot. Whatever they have to say, say it. That's it. We start from the back, go all the way here. We imply things. There's a hurdle in their way, they cross over. We walk around it. They just want to entertain easily. We actually cook and make tea. Their relationship is very, sporadic here and there. Our relationship style is this and this. Now, when these things happen, what actually happens is that although we are living in the same household, but the parents come from high context culture, we are raising the kids who are low context culture. And then this is the argument that Muslim culture are usually high context, but their children conform to the norms of the low context culture. And that is why we are saying that Muslim children are losing their identities. And then our youth is facing issues that are more common in the low context culture, which is they are not getting married or there is increased divorce rate. Now, when these problems arise, what is the solution? Some questions arise. Some people ask that if a boy and girl meet with each other in the privacy after their nikah before the consummation of marriages is allowed. The answer is yes and no. No, because Quran is very specific about that. That the status of women after nikah, before the marriage is actually husband and wife start living together, is completely different from what is considered to be a relationship between a man and woman who are living together after nikah. But in this country, going back to those pictures and all of those things that we showed you, we have a different set of norms. Until and unless you raise your kids and keep reminding your children that these are the norms and we conform to these norms and society is saying the other thing, we are completely different. When they are adult and where they are at the age of getting married, and then you tell them, okay, no, you are not, you already have this and this and you cannot do that, this and that, and then they go back and they talk back. Another question some people ask, that should young adults, especially male, can get married before they are financially independent? The answer is yes, and answer is no. Yes means that if they are responsible and the parents see that, okay, fine, the son is going to graduate in 2 years or 1 year and then he's going to get a job and eventually he will take care of his family, then it's fine. But if parents think that this is not going to happen, this child is not ready, even in 2 or 3 years he will not be able to take care of his wife, then no. But the question is why? Isn't marriage protects a person from falling into sin? And this is one of the reasons why people are there's a trend that people, they want their kids to get married early so that they are protected and they don't fall into zina. But the question is that, is marriage a barrier against sin? Because if there is a chronic problem that parents are not able to tell their kids what they were expecting, or they did not understand from where the child was coming from, and because of that clash, the child is vulnerable, angry, or doing things that parents do not agree with, and then they think that, oh, let's get him married so that he's not going to fall into sin. It's not necessary. And then we have cases after cases after cases that just because people thought that, okay, nikah is saving from zina, but then the man or even the girl sometimes is not ready to take up the responsibility because they were not taught. The parents did not know what they were missing when they were raising those kids. So they get married, but after that, sometimes extramarital affairs, or sometimes they just take divorce and they say, you know what, I'm done with you. Because marriage is not band-aid. It's not the solution of a problem, because there are different types of problems. You can see this picture. There are different types of fractures. So these are just a scenario, like there are different types of problems. But when these types of problem occur, whether it's a hairline fracture or the bone is like completely broken into 3 pieces, and these are just an analogy to explain the personal problems in an individual's life. What is the solution for any of these things? You need to go to an orthopedic and get it, a proper, fix it. Not this. So the analogy is that this is the problem of a child raising in a community where either he or she was misunderstood or was not guided properly by the parents. But then when this problem occurs, parents said this is the solution. Putting a band-aid. Let the child get married and all the problems will be solved. Different types of band-aids or different color of band-aids. Traditional, love marriages, forced marriages, cousin marriages, this and that, whatever. Or sometimes put band-aids so that you keep quiet and that's it. You are married, deal with it. None of this is what Islam is all about. If you go back to the hadith that I started with, the discussion is with, if you like the deen of a person, then let your child get married. Deen, to teach deen to your kids is your responsibility. Before they tie the knot, before they reach the age of getting married, from the day they are born till the day they are married, your main goal is to make sure that they become good husbands and good wives and good parents, which basically all mean one thing, that they produce and raise good kids. Why? So that the goodness which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for all human beings, especially Muslims, to do good things, that things continues. Marriage is not only traditional or cultural or emotional or anything. It is basically a religious responsibility, an institution established by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding of how to take this thing seriously, how to raise those kids who become good parents. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the understanding and give us all the aql and all the knowledge and all the wisdom to first learn ourselves what is our responsibility as parents, and then teach our kids to be those good citizens in this community. Ameen. Wa ma alayna illa al-balagh. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair, Sister Farhana, for a very eye-opening perspective, one that we tend to glaze and gloss over and not really pay attention to, highlighting the differences culturally and religiously and what we face here with our children and their issues in this country, in this society, and onwards how our religion and this deen, the culmination and the summary of what a marriage should be. SubhanAllah, Jazakallah khair. Again, many special thanks and du'as to you and your family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the blessings ever needed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our next speaker will talk to us about the aftermath of what a marriage is, or what happens when conflicts arise. Her talk is entitled, "It's Not Supposed to Be This Way and When Conflict Arises in the Marriage." Sister Sadia Yunus, before I ask her to come to the mic, she is a licensed marriage and family therapist living with her family in New York. She is a motivational speaker, a community leader. She's earned her master's degree in marriage and family therapy from Hofstra University in New York, and she has many years of experience working with individuals, couples, and families and groups, and she's skilled in the modalities of structural family therapy, solution-focused therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy. And she has an active social media presence on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Without any further delay, I would like to ask Sister Sadia Yunus to come to the mic. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone is doing well, inshallah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm going to be talking about the topic on your screen. It's not supposed to be this way when conflict arises in marriage. And alhamdulillah, I've been given the honor and blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's such a blessing every day to be a therapist. I work with individuals, couples, and families. And you know, the majority of my work, I would say, is with couples. And so alhamdulillah, having studied this and just working on a daily basis with couples, there's so much that I would like to share with you. But with the limited time that we do have, I definitely wanted to focus on recognizing conflict and of course, what to do when conflict does arise. So I would recommend taking notes if you're able to, and if you have any questions later on, you can always contact me, inshallah, to discuss. So let's begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربنا زدنا علما. Okay, so first of all, it is so important to recognize marital conflict. Like, what does it look and feel like? It really seems like this is a common sense thing. Like, everybody should really know or will really know what marital conflict is. But this is not always the case. You know, I have so many women who come in, and the majority of my clients being women, I have men as well. But women who are struggling in their marriages, women tend to be a little bit more open when it comes to reaching out for therapy, even though I'm seeing a shift, alhamdulillah, which is really exciting. More men are coming in for therapy as well, which is such a positive sign. But a lot of women who come in, they say, you know, they'll tell me some of the things that they're going through, some of the arguments, some of the things that their spouse has said, and not even sure that it's a bad thing or it's a horrible thing. Oh, is that really bad that he said this to me? Or I'm feeling hurt and I'm feeling upset, and maybe I shouldn't be feeling this way. So a lot of times belittling how they feel. And so much of it is, it's important for us to recognize marital conflict, even from the outside observing in. You know, we may be parents, we may be parents-in-law, we may be friends, sisters, and just kind of looking in to somebody else's marriage and recognizing signs of distress from the outside. You know, maybe there's, you know, maybe a sister, you know, has been kind of distant from the community lately. Maybe she keeps canceling every time, you know, she says that she's going to be somewhere. You know, it's important for us as a community to kind of recognize these signs and actually to ask, you know, is everything okay at home? Is everything okay with your marriage? We should know the red signs, the red flags of when to recognize when there's possibly, you know, marital distress, marital conflict. But even in our own marriages, it's essential to know what it feels like. If it doesn't feel right, if you're feeling sad about your marriage, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling trapped, all of these things, it's essential to pay attention to and to know what marital conflict looks like and feels like. So let's go back to how it's supposed to be. Okay, now we know the importance of recognizing marital conflict, knowing what it is, and we will go into a little bit more detail. But I wanted us to bring us back to, you know, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about what marriage is really supposed to be. And so Allah tells us that, and of his signs is that I created for you from yourselves mates, that you may find tranquility in them. And he placed between you mawadda and rahma, or that love and that compassion and mercy. Indeed, in that are signs for a people who give thought. And subhanAllah, it really is for us, because we're sitting back and we're trying to reflect on this. Like, what is a marriage supposed to be? People make all kinds of jokes about, like, oh, you're stuck now, or, you know, it's pretty miserable once you're married. You know, people make all of these jokes, but that's not how it's supposed to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us more than we know ourselves, and he created us, and he said, this is what we created for you. We created you a marital situation in which you should have that love and compassion in it. And if you're not having that in your marriage, there's something wrong. There's something to pay attention to. There's something to work on. There's improvement that is needed. Maybe as a couple, you need to take a workshop together. Maybe you need to get a marital, like a book on marriage and how to make it work, and actually sit down and read it and say, how do we need to change? You know, oftentimes we're not taught as a society how to be a spouse, how to be a wife, how to be a husband. We're just taught kind of culturally, like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. But what about that mawadda and that rahma, and really about making ourselves a compassionate human being within our marriage so that we make it work? So this is how it's supposed to be. we can't think that, oh, and subhanAllah, so many of the young girls today, 20s, 30s, they see marriage as, unfortunately, something that they're stuck in, and they won't be able to have freedom, and they're going to be controlled. And a lot of them look at marriage in this way, and so they don't want to get married. And if you're seeing marriage in that way, right, in a place where I'll be stuck and trapped and controlled and I can't do things, who would want to get married? So it's about viewing marriage as this is the way that it's supposed to be. And if it's not, then we reach out, then we get help, then we go to therapy, and we go to a workshop together. We figure out how to be better as spouses, because we can't settle into or settle back into abuse or neglect or, being looked over or not being treated right. That's the most important thing that we can teach our girls from a very young age, and boys too, definitely. But it's about really like how you should be treated in a marriage. And if you're not treated that way, then it's time to reach out. It's time to recognize that this is not okay. So the purpose of us is to find that tranquility in them. And we know Allah says He's also created you from a single person, and He's created from his spouse, liyaskunu ilayha, right? That there's that sukun or sakina, right? That peace, tranquility, and calm. This is what we should see and feel and experience in the presence of our spouses. And so if we're not feeling that, it's time to reach out for help. It's not about sitting back and just saying, oh, that's just my marriage, or that's just my husband, or that's just the way that it is. No, we deserve to have that sakina in our relationships. And we make that dua always, right? For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. That we ask Allah to give in us, our spouses and children, the coolness of our eyes. It's not just our children. It's not just our children that we're like, oh, let my children be obedient and listen to me. But it's in my spouse as well. Let me see my spouse and have such a coolness in my eyes and such a peace in my heart and such a beautiful feeling. Right? We ask Allah to give all of us that, and everyone who's looking for a spouse to give them that as well. Ameen. But it really is about this is the standard. Marriage is not supposed to be miserable and horrible and dreadful and exhausting. This is the standard. This is what we have to aim for, and we have to believe that we deserve. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that, and we work towards it. We can't just sit back and accept what is. Striving for that sakina in the relationship. Next, the 4 horsemen. Okay, so now we're going into recognizing conflict, recognizing when things are bad. And so John Gottman, I think I just put Gottman, but okay, here's all of it. So John Gottman is an expert on marriage, okay? Anything marriage related that's from Gottman, it's very good information because he's been studying marriages for decades, and he has a love lab in Seattle in which he has couples come in and they record couples. They have them connected to all kinds of monitors and heart monitors and blood pressure monitors and etc. And he really observes them to see how their communication style is and how their connection is, etc. So he's come up based on research, so it's not just a theory or something that he made up, but based on research about what these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are. So 4 things that are in a marriage that will break it down, that will lead to its demise, or that will really make it a very uncomfortable, horrible place to be in. So it's about looking at our marriages and recognizing if we have any of these. So number 1 is criticism. Is there criticism in the relationship where you're criticizing each other and putting each other down? So a complaint is, oh, there's socks left on the floor. Let's pick those up and put them in the laundry room. Criticism is, why do you always leave your socks on the floor? Or you always. Oh, always is such a bad word in marriages. I tell my couples, We're going to remove never and always from our conversations, because it's never, never and always. So it's like you always leave your socks on the floor. So that's criticism. It's putting the other person down. So we want to change that into complaints. When you leave your socks on the floor, it makes me frustrated, instead of you always do this, or why do you do this? Number 2 is defensiveness. And obviously those go hand in hand. If somebody's criticizing you, you're going to be defensive. So oftentimes these exist together. But when you're expressing something to your spouse and they become defensive, it's a signal for you that you're probably coming off as criticizing. So defensiveness is like, why are you attacking me? Like, what is this all about? And, I didn't do that. And I was just exhausted. So I left them wherever I wanted to leave them. So it's not really hearing the other person. That means the spouses are not hearing each other. There's criticism, there's defensiveness. It goes back and forth and hand in hand. And it's really about stepping back, when you're able to step back. And that's what marriage therapy helps you to do. It helps you to see your relationship and your communication from a bird's eye view, that I'm not just experiencing it in the moment, but I'm also looking above, and I'm looking at the interaction. That, hey, I'm criticizing and you're defending yourself. So how do we break this cycle? How do we break this communication? Because it's not working. We're not hearing each other. Right? You want it to be where, like, oh, when you leave your socks on the floor, it makes me a little frustrated. Do you think you can just put it in the laundry basket? And the other person to be like, oh, sure, no problem, babe. I'm sorry about that. No worries. And you go pick it up and go put it away. That's an ideal interaction. But oftentimes there's that criticism and defensiveness that happens, and then you end up fighting and screaming and yelling at each other over a dumb pair of socks. But it's really about recognizing that cycle. Okay, so those are really the first steps. And the last 2 are pretty bad. So stonewalling is when you are no longer listening to your partner and you are completely shut down. So you're basically, it's like you're a wall, because you're no longer listening to the other person. You're shut down. They're looking the other way. They're rolling their eyes. They're actually rolling their eyes is a bit of contempt, but sticking on stonewalling, they're shutting you out. They're tuning you out. They're no longer listening to you. They grab their phone and they start scrolling on their phone, and you're like, hello, I'm talking to you. And so it's you or them. Obviously, I'm not just blaming it all on our spouses, but it's recognizing when I'm stonewalling and when my spouse is stonewalling. And that's the complete breakdown of communication. There's no longer listening, no longer communication cannot occur when there's stonewalling. And I definitely recommend looking into these 4 horsemen on your own, because there's so much more. I'm really just giving an overview, and but I definitely recommend going into detail. Gottman has an amazing book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. So get the book, read it, have your spouse read it. If you have grown kids who are about to get married, getting married, anybody who's about to get married, like, just recommend this book to them. I use it with my premarital couples as well. So that's stonewalling. And oftentimes, like I said, it goes deeper. So stonewalling is usually trying to self-soothe. That means the person is too overwhelmed by the conversation. Either they're getting anxious, they're getting overwhelmed, they're feeling like the physiological activation in their body is just too much. Maybe their heart is pounding. And so usually a person stonewalls when they just can't handle the conversation anymore. A lot of times it looks like they don't care, but it more often is it was too overwhelming for them, and they just had to take a mental break. They had to take an emotional break from the conversation. And then contempt is the worst, and it is the biggest predictor of divorce. And Gottman actually can predict within a few minutes of a conversation with 91% accuracy if a couple is going to divorce or not. That's how great his research is. So contempt is looking down on a person. Contempt is feeling like you're better than the other person, looking down on them, being disgusted by them. It's like disgust. So contempt is really the worst. It's the rolling of the eyes. It's the, psh, you know, things like that with your spouse. It's like dismissing what they say. Just, you know, completely dismissal, you know, kind of like stepped out of the relationship, not feeling any respect or any admiration. And Gottman talks about how a culture of admiration is so essential in a marriage. And when you lose that admiration in each other, it can really be where the foundation is cracked. And I want you to kind of picture a foundation like a house that is the marriage. And so if that admiration is no longer there, there are definitely cracks. And with these 4 horsemen, lots of cracks in the foundation, and contempt being the worst, where it's about to fall apart. Next. Okay, so this one is a little bit about the fighting styles. And fighting, I want to tell you about fighting. It doesn't always mean the end of the world. And I tell couples that because they come in with fighting going on and they just think their marriage is over. And I give them a little bit of hope, because I do that with my couples. Because subhanAllah, I see so much strength and resilience in couples that they often don't see in themselves. And that's why marriage therapy and marriage counseling is essential, because it's somebody from the outside looking into your marriage and somebody with a professional eye, that they can really look into your marriage and see what those cracks are that maybe you can't even see, and they help you to fix those cracks. Marriage therapy is awesome. Okay, so the fighting styles. Oh, okay, so that's what I was going to say before I got distracted. The fighting is not always bad in a relationship. It can be good in the sense that there's still passion in the relationship. There's still, you know, it means that you're, what's the word I'm trying to get to? It means that you are still, you still have feeling, and you still have, you know, passion towards each other. Because the worst kind of situation is when there's no fighting, there's no arguing, there's kind of like an indifference between each other. You feel indifferent. It's like your roommates. There isn't a lot of passion and feeling. So when there's fighting, it can be a good thing in a way, because there is still passion in the relationship. So there's different fighting styles, and of course this is not all of them. I go through a lot of them with my couples, but one being like the pursuer distancer, and this is a very common one, in the sense of one person may feel like, okay, I want to talk about everything right now. We have to just hash it out right now. I want to talk about everything. We have to resolve everything right now. And the distancer is like, wait a minute, like, I'm a little too overwhelmed. I don't want to talk about it now. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And so there's this different way of dealing with conflict, different way of dealing with trying to resolve an issue. And so I help couples to kind of come to a middle ground in the way that the pursuer kind of steps back a little bit and the distancer kind of moves towards the spouse. In that, okay, I may not want to talk about it now, but I'll give you a time frame. Like, let's talk about it in half an hour. I just need to calm down. I need to take a drink of water. I need to relax a bit. Let's reassess in half an hour. And the pursuer kind of has to be like, well, half an hour is a little too much for me. You know, let's do 15 minutes. Or, okay, half an hour is okay. Let's sit down half an hour. And they go take a break and come back to it. And that's something I don't have a slide on, but I want to emphasize. Knowing when you're too worked up, you know, you have too much physiological activation, your heart's racing, you're sweating, you're feeling anxious, you know, your blood pressure is going up, and you can't even think straight. Knowing when that is occurring and taking a break from the conversation, being able to step back and say, wait a minute, we need to calm down before we have communication. Because what happens is too much physiological activation shuts down the thinking portion of the brain, and you're not able to even think straight. So if you're not able to think straight, imagine how communication is going to go. You're not going to be able to communicate properly. You're not even going to be able to hear each other. So it's so important, just like the Prophet ﷺ said, when you feel angry, to take that break, to take a sip of water, to make wudu, to sit down, lie down, And that's what we do, in our relationships as well. If you feel like you're not at that place to communicate effectively, it's time to take a break. And there's so much on that that I can talk about, but we'll move forward. Communicator, feeler. So oftentimes there's somebody who's better at communicating, meaning through words. They want to talk about things, and the other one not so much. They're not as as comfortable using words, speaking about things, and they may feel things strongly. So there's different ways, and it's important to know like our style and the style of our spouse. And of course, Gottman talks about the dreams within, or the feeling behind the words. As we were talking about earlier about the socks being left on the floor, we might be talking about socks being left on the floor, but if we're actually going deeper, we're talking about respect, disrespect. We're talking about love or not love, in the sense that you left your socks on the floor, so that means you don't love me. You left your socks on the floor, so that means you disrespect me. And this is often what we don't talk about. It's deeper than the actual words. And that's where a therapist will help you to get behind those words. And for us as couples, really, to ask the other person and to really inquire, we have to take a stance of curiosity instead of automatically reacting. So if somebody says to you, oh, you left your socks on the floor, we might automatically think, oh, they're complaining, they're, just trying to attack me. That might automatically come out, but it's important that we use the clarifying question. And I have a video on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, on this very thing, the clarifying question, if you want more details. But it's really about asking, oh, what do you mean by that? Or, what did that do to you when I left my socks on the floor? Like, what are you feeling, or what are you going through? So seeking to understand before we are, just responding, trying to get to the feeling behind the words. Okay, so what is poor conflict resolution? Poor conflict resolution, when we're trying to figure out how to communicate, how to resolve our issue, usually couples will engage in fight, flight, or freeze behaviors. So knowing your style and knowing your spouse's style. Fighting is staying mad, holding grudges, arguing, yelling, all of this. Fleeing is avoiding important issues, sweeping it under the rug, avoiding a conversation, saying, oh, I don't want to talk about it right now. And then, days and weeks go by. Basically a conflict avoider, really avoiding conflict. And that goes back to childhood, but again, a whole nother conversation. And the last one being freezing. So endless arguments, no resolution in sight, and then freezing. And that kind of goes back to the stonewalling. They freeze emotionally, they shut down. There's no communication that's going to be happening. And someone who freezes in a relationship typically goes through the motions on the outside, but has stopped caring on the inside. And it's not always about not caring anymore, but it's really a kind of numbing. They just numb themselves to the arguments, or to the complaints, or, to the nagging, as they would probably call it. So they just numb themselves to deal with it. It's just too much to deal with. So now we know what all the issues are, what the fighting styles are. It's time to take things seriously. So there's an issue in the relationship. We're not communicating. We're not hearing each other. I don't feel good. I don't feel heard by my partner. So it's time to take things seriously. Number one is to realize, right? Okay, so we've realized there's a problem. Reassess. Reassess is really to sit down and kind of be like, okay, we didn't really communicate well last night. We argued, we fought over something. That means that there's something going on. So let's kind of sit back and reflecting on the relationship. That's kind of like reassess. And then request. So you're requesting your partner to, can we work on our marriage? Let's reach out to a marriage therapist. Let's read this article on Gottman together. So it's requesting your spouse to meet you halfway, to, this is the issue, these are the issues, we're not happy, so let's do something about it. And then respond, which is the other side, right? You're getting the request and then you respond. But you also respond as the requester. You're responding to what they're saying. They may be like, oh, I'm really busy this week. This week is busy at work. And so you respond in the way of like, okay, but can I set up a therapy session for next week? So responding in the way that you're also reaching out to the other person. And then reaching out to a therapist. It is essential, because the mistake that couples make is that they come into therapy way too late. And this is a difference I've noticed with my Muslim couples and non-Muslim couples, is that, I ask the non-Muslim couples, okay, when did this problem start happening? When did you start experiencing these issues? 6 months, 3 months, last week. And then when it comes to my Muslim couples, it's like 16 years, ever since we got married, it's been years, I don't even remember. And so why did it take them so long to come in? And of course, that's, as a society, as a community, we really have to get rid of this ridiculous belief that you don't reach out for therapy and you don't tell other people your problems and whatever all the nonsense is. It's really nonsense now. We can't even call it stigma anymore. It's nonsense, because reaching out for therapy is what is, even as a Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these resources. The Prophet ﷺ himself was a marriage therapist, that people would go to him and he was the expert in the land to get this kind of help. Now we don't have a prophet among us, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us professionals in different areas. He's given us an oncologist for cancer. He's given us a podiatrist for feet issues. He's given us a dentist for teeth issues. He's given us a therapist for our mental health, emotional health, relationship health issues. And so it's so essential that we reach out for help and not delay even 1 second. So here's Gottman's Sound Relationship House. This is really the goal. This is what we want. This is what we want to work on. And when we go to a marriage therapist, specifically Gottman trained or somebody who's Gottman familiar, I've completed level 1 of Gottman training. There's 3 levels, but I'm, alhamdulillah, very much like Gottman informed, and I use Gottman a lot with my couples. So he talks about, this is a sound relationship house. So this is the house we were talking about, the marital house that is where we want to get to, right? And that foundation is that trust and commitment. So the commitment to the marriage. And I know Sister Farhana was talking about earlier about having that sense of, okay, this is my marriage and this is the marriage that is going to last. I'm not going to think about another option of, oh, I have so many other options. I could leave this marriage and I could, go find somebody else or whatever. The commitment is there. And of course, divorce is there as an option. Alhamdulillah, Allah is merciful and He's given it for the situations that, that need to end in divorce. But this is the goal that we want to have as far as marriage, for it to be based on that trust and commitment. And this is what he talks about: creating shared meaning, making your life dreams come true, manage conflict, and this is a lot of what we're talking about. Positive perspective, turn towards instead of away, share fondness and admiration, and build love maps. And I'm not going to go into too much detail of each of them, but building love maps is really maintaining an awareness of your spouse's world, knowing what they love, what upsets them, what triggers them. Fondness and admiration, I talked about earlier, is really about trying to keep that emotional connection alive and keeping that admiration for your partner. If you feel like you've forgotten some of their good qualities or you've been fighting so much, make a list. Write down a list of, these are 10 things I admire about my spouse. And believe me, that admiration will take you far, because with admiration comes respect. If you're no longer respecting each other, you're probably not admiring each other anymore. So turn towards each other instead of away. Instead of turning away, turning to other relationships, turning to, talk about your relationship with another family member. Try to turn towards each other and connect emotionally. Positive perspective is there's a successful relationship has 5 positive statements to every negative statement. So think about that, how you balance that in your marriage. 5 positive statements to every negative statement. So there's more positivity occurring. Managing conflict, and this is what we're focusing on. So it's accepting influence from your partner, being able to actually listen, to be like, oh, that upsets you? Okay, let me hear more about that. Being open to compromise, discussing your problems with each other. Sometimes it really is about taking turns, not just saying, spitting out everything that's bothering me, but taking turns with the other person, right? Letting them know that, okay, you matter too. Practicing self-soothing is essential. Keeping yourself calm. We talked about that. We talked about the physiological activation is so essential to keep yourself calm in an argument, in a discussion. And I'm not going to talk about the last 2 because we don't have too much time, but making your life dreams come true with each other and creating that shared meaning. What is the mission of your marriage? What makes you want to make it work? Trust and commitment is the foundation, right? That's what we talked about. So 5 ways to build that trust and loyalty. Making trustworthiness a main priority in your relationship. Acting to maximize your partner's well-being. Knowing that trust is built in small positive moments. Avoiding negative comparisons. And this is something, unfortunately, that we do with the social media world out there and other relationships. We're comparing constantly. And it really is about watering your own grass instead of looking at and thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. Generating frequent thoughts and acts that cherish your partner's positive qualities and minimizes your focus on their negative faults. So this was making that list. What do I admire about my spouse? What is amazing about my spouse? And then going back to rahma, right? Or that compassion. And how can we have compassion for others when we have self-compassion? So it's not about sacrificing ourselves for someone else. It's about working on our own selves. Individual therapy can be a huge growth, self-help books, exercising, having our own social circles. So working on our own self-compassion, being kind to ourselves, that will help us to look compassionately at others. We tend to complain more when we're seeing negativity within ourselves. If we're not happy in ourselves, in our own mind, heart, and souls, how can we be happy with another human being? So it's working on our relationships, yes, but also working on ourselves as individuals. So it's showing mercy for others and keeping the ties of kinship and really seeing it as sacred. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me this person as a spouse. This relationship is sacred. It's not a separate individual. It's not me versus him. It's the 2 of us together against shaitan and against all the pressures that are in this world. So lastly, it really is about reaching out for help. Being open to marriage therapy, marriage counseling, seeing that there's nothing wrong with seeking help from a therapist. It really will give a lot of insight into the marriage and give us a perspective that we're not seeing. And just imagine there's 2 individuals, they're going back and forth and they're arguing is you this, me this, versus somebody who's viewing from the outside how the 2 of you are communicating. And if one spouse won't go, and this is a lot of the case, right, is like, okay, I want to go get therapy, but my spouse won't go. Go anyways. Go anyways, because even if one person is going to therapy, it will benefit the entire relationship. So even one person should go to the therapist, even if your spouse won't go with you. They might not be open to it. They might still have following that stigma, and so they're not open to it. So it's essential that you go on your own. So again, therapy is that professional who's looking in on your relationship and helping the 2 of you communicate better. And there's a lot of misconception about therapy itself. People think that a therapist is a referee or a mediator or somebody that, one person is talking to, and then the other spouse talks to. And really, that's only how the first session looks like. After that, it's more about, and this is the way that I do things as a licensed marriage and family therapist. There's a lot of different types of therapists out there, but most of my therapy is the two of you as husband and wife speaking to each other. And I'm the coach, I'm the director, right? In the sense of helping the two of you communicate better, catching moments of disconnect, catching moments of not hearing your spouse, and helping the two of you get to a place of understanding. So alhamdulillah, this is the end of the talk, in the sense of recognizing what are the issues in a marriage, you know, what conflict is, what does it feel like? It really is agitation in the body, agitation in the mind and the body. And it is about recognizing it and being able to take steps towards change, so that you can see that this is not where I want to be. I'm supposed to be at that mawadda and rahma and that sukoon within my relationship. And if I'm not there, I need to be taking steps towards conflict resolution, towards a peaceful connection with my spouse to make things better. So it's essential to reach out to a therapist. Oftentimes people reach out to extended family members, and this can work, right? Even the Quran, it says one family member from her side, one from his, and that can be a good first step. But it's also about seeing, is that helping? Is it making things work, or is it making things worse? And that's when you reach out to a neutral party who has nothing to do with your family, and they're able to see what's going on and to give you that feedback. So you can contact me, inshallah, my website, my email. This is my work number, but it's also my cell number, so you can even send me a text message. I'm, again, all over social media. There's a lot of YouTube videos, and inshallah, I'm going to be doing more videos as far as on couples counseling, individual, and you know, all the issues that we face as a community, and how can we come together to make things better. So you can contact me anytime. Jazakallah khairan, everyone, for listening. And, you know, I hope to speak to you soon. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair, Sadia, for such a much needed kind of discourse and mapping guide of what to do and how to recognize conflict before it happens, and how to navigate crises before, during, and after. And the important part also of reaching out to outside sources who can help us to understand and resolve these issues and conflicts before they get worse, or to identify if it's gotten so bad, then what is the next step and what should we do? Jazakumullah khairan again for your insight, for both of our sister speakers, Sister Farhana Matin and Sadia Yunus, for your insights and your the validity of the need and the necessity of what you have spoken about. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Like I said in the beginning, this is just to remind you that we are taking questions from you now for the next 30 minutes. If you feel, though, that your question was not answered or you need more information, please, you can always contact the matrimonial department at ICNA Matrimonial, DEPT at gmail.com. Again, that's ICNA Matrimonial, DEPT at gmail.com. Also, Sister Farhana Matin also has her contact information that she can share with us, and Sister Sadia Yunus here has also given us her contact information to help and reach out to her if for more questions or concerns. But for right now, we have sisters, we have ladies on our conference line who are not attached right now to this webinar room. So we will open that conference line and unmute them so they can ask questions. Please keep your questions precise and to the point, inshallah ta'ala, and either of our speaker can help answer. You can direct it to a certain speaker, or you can generalize and say that either speaker can answer. For those of us sitting here in this room, in the webinar room, you are requested to write down your questions, and I will read them out loud, and then one of the speakers will be able to reply. So inshallah, those of us on the conference line, they can come and ask their questions one by one. Inshallah, please be mindful of the time. We have only about 30 minutes, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. So this is a good time to also think of questions you may have. Maybe someone else is you want to ask on someone else's behalf. Anything, any sort of material that you're concerned about, you need more clarification. Inshallah, please think about it, and we will wait for your questions, inshallah. So if our conference line sisters are still need a little bit more time to ask their questions, there are some questions coming in our question panel here and from our webinar room, and this is to Sister Farhana Matin. The first question here is, why was there a comparison between Muslim and the West? The West also has Muslims, and East has non-Muslims. So Sister Farhana, if you can answer that question, please.
Yes, assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Just like I said earlier, that from the sociological point of view, when we compare two cultures, we do not first of all say any culture is right or wrong, but the very a peculiar thing about Eastern cultures, if they are Muslim, is that their culture is derived from Islam. As opposed to in Western culture, majority of the Western countries are not Muslim countries, so their culture is not derived from Islam or any religion per se. So that's why this differentiation has to be made from the academic point of view, not from the comparing things that they are right or wrong. Because if a community takes their traditions from culture, from religion, as opposed to a community that does not. So the norms of a community, I'm not talking about that individual Muslims are doing this or not doing that, but the majority of things, like for example, putting henna on your hands, has nothing to do with Islam, but most of the Muslim countries do that, and most of the non-Muslims from the Western people do not do that. So it's just one of those things. Inshallah, I hope I'm clear.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Farhana. The next question is towards Sadia again, that what was the name of the book that you had mentioned and the author of the book?
Yeah, so the book that I mentioned was Dr. John Gottman, Gottman, and the title is The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, John Gottman.
And Sadia, another question to you is, what do you do when your spouse does not apologize after an argument or misunderstanding?
Okay, so I would definitely recommend taking the quiz, the 5 languages of apology. You can also take the quiz, the 5 love languages, which I would recommend as well. The website is 5, the number 5, lovelanguages.com. So 5, the number 5, lovelanguages.com, and it also has a quiz for the languages of apology. And so it'll help you to become a little bit more aware with the different languages of apology. Some people need to hear, I am sorry, and others, their apology is just now changing their behavior. Maybe they don't say the word, I'm sorry, but then they kind of change what they do. Or others will just give you a hug, and that's their apology. So definitely being aware of that number one. And then number two, being able to communicate to your spouse how important an apology is to you. So if that apology is important in whatever form, it's about being able to communicate that and to be like, you know, when you did this, that's a good way to phrase things, is when you did this, I felt. So when you did this, I felt upset, I felt sad, and it's very important for me that you do blank, that you do this, that you apologize, that you fix your behavior, that you write me a letter of apology, whatever it is. But it's important that you communicate that to your spouse instead of keeping it in, being angry about it, harboring resentment, and then that leads to contempt.
Jazakallah khair, Sadia. So Sister Farhana, we're going to pose this next summarized question to you. The sister was saying that, you know, a lot of kids who see their parents fighting continuously, and then they say that, oh, we don't want to get married because, you know, our parents are fighting. How can we help them overcome that and realize that sometimes fighting is not the end of the world, like Sadia was mentioning in her talk, but how do you make the children realize that that's okay? And, you know, parents will, you know, they will resolve their issues. And it doesn't mean that's the end of a marriage or that you should never get married.
I think most part of my program, when I was discussing the differences between definition of marriage and different cultures and high, power distance and all of these terms that I used, was basically to address this issue, that the reason kids who are raised in a Western society, as opposed to parents who are not raised in a Western society, their understanding about fighting or arguing or discussing things is completely different. And that's why I explain this thing in much detail, because we live in a different planet, and we means people who are, because I am not born and raised in this country. So the way I think things, and I gave you the example of when I asked my son to bring some, mint leaves. From me, it was a very simple thing, and my understanding was that he's going to bring me like 10, 15 leaves. But when I said few, he brought 3. So this is the difference between cultures, and that's why I discussed this thing, that this is a cultural differences, and that was the whole idea behind having this discussion today, was to, from the very beginning, when kids are young, instead of just telling them that, okay, we are from Bangladesh, or we are from Pakistan, or we are from Arab, or this country or that country, and then you guys are American and you think like that. Instead of that, we have to realize that, okay, if I'm from a certain country and my child is definitely from a certain country, and there is going to be different definition of certain things. Some things that are very minor for me could be a major thing for them, as opposed to exact opposite. So if we have an open communication and discussion in the family from the very beginning, that it's not about being right and wrong, but that then yes, cultures and interpretation of certain things are different, then this discussion can happen when they are adult, or even if it is not too late. Even if they are adults, just explain them that this is the definition of argument in our culture, and this is the definition of argument in your culture. Because simple definition of respect, what is respect? For example, I can give you a very blunt example, like the country from where I'm coming from, like from Pakistan. If you call a woman, a middle-aged woman, that why have you gained so much weight, is not considered as an offensive statement, because it's something that people just can openly ask about. Why are you fat, for example? But if you say this thing to somebody who is raised in this country, it's very offensive. Like, you cannot talk to people about their age, their income, their religion, their orientation and everything. And for other parts of the world, it's just completely normal. People can ask you their personal question. So this discussion is very important, and inshallah, if that happens, then this discussion, this problem will be resolved, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Farhana. Before we go on to our next question from the webinar room, are there any ladies who would like to ask verbally from the conference line? If there are any questions from there coming, I'll pause the questions here and we'll go to them first, inshallah. If not, then we will continue here. So, Sadia, the next summarized question for you is, and I'm summarizing it, of course, because inshallah you'll be able to fulfill all the fill in all the details. But someone is asking, sister is asking that how can you explain to a 20-year-old who is probably ready to get married what the compatibility is needed, what sort of compatibility is needed in order to be married to someone else in order to get married?
Say that last part again.
Just in order to get married and to be marriage material yourself, what sort of compatibility is needed? How can you explain that to, for example, a 20-year-old?
Yeah, it's a tough question. What is compatibility anyways? It's really about how the person sees compatibility. Any two people can be compatible, can make it work if they have that, that commitment and that willingness to learn and to grow together, right? No matter how different they are. I've had thousands of couples in front of me, and there are people who are completely opposites and people who are exactly the same and all in between, and they make it work or they don't make it work. So it's really about the one person asking or finding out from the 20-year-old, what does compatibility mean to you? And what do you think is compatible? Some of these 20-somethings, when you ask them about compatibility, they're like, oh, just somebody my age, or somebody 2 years older than me at the most. So it's really about who is defining compatibility and working within their definition and helping them to broaden their view a little bit about compatibility. Like, you don't necessarily have to be a certain age, a certain culture, a certain, intellect, a certain job, to be compatible. You can be absolutely anything. It really is, as Muslims, the foundation is Islam, right? That's what we believe in, compatibility. But beyond that, the sky's the limit.
Jazakallah khair. Sister Farhana, the next question to you is an interesting one. The idea of a man being in control, or the man being the man of the house, how does that idea fit into the 21st century? Basically, how can you foster a healthy relationship when the man is supposed to be or assumed to be in control of everything?
Well, the word "in control of everything" is a word that needs to be discussed here. From Islamic perspective, the concept of controlling things does not mean that somebody is a ruler, rather a caretaker or a manager, if you talk about from the Islamic perspective. And if we translate, I think, most of the problems between cultures, and when it comes to religion, and we are living in a society where the standards are different, but the main problem is language. I believe the main problem is language, because the concept of control from Islamic perspective, the word is qawwam. Qawwam does not mean a ruler or controller or somebody is this and that, but more of a responsible, a person who is going to be asked first in case of anything goes wrong. So the word controller, or the concept of controller, is not from Islam. But yes, it's a very cultural concept, and with its negatives and positives, both. So I don't think it's a question that comes if we discuss marriage from the religious perspective, from an Islamic perspective. But yes, if we are talking about culture, then Eastern culture has the benefits also when men are quote unquote controller. But then there are disadvantages, and same as in the Western community also. But I think it's, whenever we talk about men being given more importance in Islam, if we can rephrase it and we can say men are giving more responsibility in Islam, then I think this problem doesn't even occur. But when we don't understand this concept of controller and ruler and, in charges and caretakers and qawwam, then the problem begins.
Yes, inshallah. Sadia, now the question to you is that what if a marriage is experiencing problems, not because of the husband and wife, but because of family members, extended family members, constant interference? expectations, and how are you supposed to also respond when, for example, the wife or the woman is expected to make most of the compromises, expected to make most of the sacrifices? What do you do in this regard?
Okay, so that was my convention speech this year on creating boundaries with in-laws. The entire talk is on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out. But basically, it really is about you can still go to marital therapy and work on yourselves as a couple, because there's something in the foundation that is cracked that's allowing other people to come in, right? It's allowing others to interfere and to give their opinions and expectations and all that kinds of stuff, because you as a couple have not created that boundary around yourselves, or have not communicated that boundary or established that boundary with other family members. It's really about strengthening yourselves as a couple and coming to the same page with regard to communicating that boundary to other family members. How do you let them in, or let their influence seep in as a couple, instead of creating that boundary and being on the same page and as a team to communicate that to the, to the extended family members? And there's a lot of complications, when it comes to like culture and all that, but it's really about, the main thing is about, as husband and wife, being on the same page with how much you're going to let in and how much you're not going to let in.
Alhamdulillah. Just a couple of more questions before we need to close our session for today. But the next question is to you again, Sadia. And the question is, how can you convince your partner or your spouse that they also need to go to therapy, family therapy, marriage therapy, and counseling? How can you, convince them that it's not only you that needs to go?
Right. So the thing about convincing is, it's really, the other person is a grown adult and they really have to come to that understanding on their own. But what you can do is to have them help, see it as that they're helping you. Like, even if they're like, okay, well, you're the problem, you need the help. You can say, well, like, I want to go to therapy. I want you to go with me, but can you go as a support for me? And can you help me and be there with me? And so oftentimes, even family members, right? Like, if you have any family member who's struggling with anything and you want them to go to therapy, you can be like, well, I can take you, I'll go with you, and I'll be there as a support for you. So you can say it in this way, similarly, in the sense of like, well, I've scheduled a session for myself. Can you go and be with me? And I've had women, especially women, who've done this, and then, I have him sitting out in the waiting room, and often I'll just be like, okay, would you like to join us? I'd like to just hear your perspective on things. And he'll join us, and he'll turn into couples therapy. So it's really about getting him to come with you somehow. And a lot of times it's like, I'd like your support. I need you to be there for me. Because when it comes to blame and criticism, nobody likes to be blamed or criticized, and they're going to be defensive. Like, okay, you need therapy too. No, I don't. You need therapy. So it really is just about being a little strategic and trying to get them, to actually get there.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair, Sadia. Sister Farhana, one final question to you is that here, and culturally speaking, in this society, we're taught and we're learned that, at the age of 18, you're considered independent and you're on your own, they go to college or they go to work. But of course, in a marriage, how can they adjust to that sort of freedom, or how can they understand the scope and the limitations of that independence, perhaps, while still being independent or having this independent mindset, but being married to someone also? How can they balance the two?
Okay, again, I'm going to say the reason why I discussed culture and different dimensions of culture in my talk was for this reason, that marriage for a Muslim is how to do it, with whom you should get married, and how to continue it. If not, then what to do in case of any disagreement. Everything comes from the religion. but then we live in a society where the standards are not derived from our religion. So that's the reason why it becomes so complicated, that the traditions that we follow, even for the wedding ceremonies, are very ethnic. The food, the color, the music, the flower, the this and that, everything is ethnic. But then we have to have nikah with an imam who has to recite something in Arabic. And at that point, we think that this has become Islamic. And then after that, right after nikah ceremony is over, something completely un-Islamic happens. So the reason why this problem occurs is that we, just like I said, all of us are in 2, 3, 4, 5 boats at the same time. So the concept of independence, the Western definition of independence, is because of the political reasons, the geopolitical reasons of why, especially if you're talking about America, why America came into being to begin with in the first place. There is a separation of church and state. So the mindset, why this country was created, what is the constitution, what is the definition of independence, everything is different. And then you bring marriage as a religious institution and try to bring both of them together, and that's why the clash begins. So it's the responsibility of the parents and the individuals themselves that yes, there are something right or correct in the cultural definition of marriage, but there is something also correct in the Western understanding of how an individual should live. And if we really want to make our marriage or our family a healthy family, a healthy atmosphere, then we have to be open-minded and understand and pick the right things from anywhere I can find. The basis of goodness and greatness definitely is always going to be the standard that is given to us by Allah. But the human interpretation of what is right and what is wrong is either cultural, either political, either social, either psychological. If we really want to work, and if we really want to be successful, then we have to be open ourselves and take goodness from wherever we can get and not become stubborn that, okay, I am never going to do something that Americans do and I'm never going to do something that Arabs or Pakistani do. This mentality or this attitude actually becomes the reason why we have this type of thing, that how can I be independent and not independent at the same time? You can be independent, but not in the way that is going to damage your marriage, for example. But in order to continue or make your marriage work does not mean that you have to suffocate because that's the culture. So then therapy comes. So to educate yourself into where the definitions are coming from the certain languages or certain sources or traditions, and therapy, they both go together, and this is how you make a good home or you save a good home, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Farhana. Sorry, one final question that was also towards you, Sister Farhana, was that how should parents avoid showing conflicts or issues in front of their children so that the children don't repeat the same things in their own marriages in the future? Or should even parents be hiding their conflicts and issues? How should the parents be hiding it, or should they even be hiding it?
Well, I think this is a hypothetical question since no specific incident is discussed. So I would just say that it depends. If there's something that definitely does not need to come out from the bedroom, then it shouldn't be. But if it's a general thing about things we should do in life, or what mistakes, everybody make mistakes, and it's not only the kids that grow, parents also grow when their kids are growing. And especially if you're talking about civilization are clashing, like culture clash is so much happening in the world, and specifically I'm going to use the term Islamophobia also, that is happening all around the globe. So because of that, I think a direct communication and conversation is very important. Parents should sit with the kids and tell them that this is something that we have done in our past, which because we did not know, maybe because there was no exposure, media was not that, and this and that, whatever the reasons could be. And now I realize that because of this, I suffer, you suffer, whatever. So we should not do that, you should not do that. But if the discussion, whatever the situation is something that is strictly between a husband and wife, then I think it's not wise to open everything in public, because if Allah has hidden something, then let's keep it that way. But open communication is always the best thing. Being honest with yourself and then being honest with others.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair, Sister Farhana, Sister Sadia. We're going to end it right here for these questions. And again, like I mentioned before, if you have any questions that perhaps were not answered or you can think of later, please reach out to this address, email address, ICNA Matrimonial, DEPT@gmail.com. Inshallah ta'ala, you can get your questions direct and rerouted to Sisters Farhana and Sadia. Many, many special thanks and du'as to our speakers today for sharing their insight, their wisdom, their knowledge, and their experience in the field and the matter that we are discussing. Many thanks and du'as to all of you sisters attending and trying to benefit and learn and relearn what we need to do going forward, inshallah ta'ala. And also many thanks and du'as to the organizers of this program, our matrimonial department who's worked tirelessly with many efforts, striving and struggling to bring this, inshallah ta'ala, this program to you. And in the end, of course, all thanks and all credit goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for enabling us to learn this message and to take heed from it and to practice what we know, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of our houses model houses of marriages filled with love, laughter, and compassion, and to show to the rest of the world that this is how it is done by the examples of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught to us in the Quran and the Sunnah. Inshallah ta'ala, before we end completely, I would like to ask Sister Farhana Matin to come back quickly and to end with dua. Jazakallah khairan.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.